So welcome to this third little film in our series Pattern of the Month. And this time first of all I can say we're shooting here on the River M. And I'm going to give you one of my newer patterns. I call it the lion fly. And it got its name from the color of the fly. It's not a banana and it's not a patagorba, it's something in between, and it actually got that lion color to it. I'm gonna tie this really special. I was sitting in my tying room and it was all a mess and I had to clean up. And you know, I love to tie those ostrich hackles where I tie in the tip and I use the first soft part of the feather, and then you get all these other parts, the bottom parts lying around, and they got so beautiful hackles, but they're too stiff to use. Sometimes I cut them, split them and wind them on, and sometimes I can take some of the fibers to tie in separately. But suddenly, like a lightning, I just looked at these feathers and I understood how to use those. I'll show you this fly here. It's tied in a different way. We call them butterflies, where I tie in the ostrich feather flat on top, under the wing. So I tie a very slim wing with the ostrich hackle fibers sticking out of the side. And those of you who've been following knows that I like to have, I don't like the way we look at the fly in the vise, because we look from the side. The fish will see them from underneath, and it's the movement underneath, from behind, that's what triggers the fish. This way of using the hackles is just ideal. You get a very broad fly with a lot of motion in the perspective from the fish eye. So I'm gonna tie this on for you and we're gonna see how it behaves in the water. And actually I've been looking at those fibers for what, 20 years without really understanding how to use them. But now I think this is just a fantastic way to tie a fly with a lot of motion, very, very translucent, and what I think they will prove to be super effective fishing flies.
Yes, so I want to welcome you to this third film in our little series Pattern of the Month. And the first two flies we've been tying, the first one was the patagorba on the TTT, and the second one was the D Samurai. Both very proven flies that's taken thousands and thousands of fish. Today I'm going to tie a new pattern. I call it the lion fly. It's a fly that really originates from the patagorba and the banana fly, but with a more discrete coloring. It actually came from dyeing the banana color that turned out too dull in the colors. But I fished the light patagorba one, and I fished the banana or the nasty banana fly. So this coloration was very, very good for me, and I created a little pattern around this. Also this time we're gonna do a pack. We started with a patagorba pack of materials. We did the D Samurai, and this time we're back on the medium SSS. Sorry for that. And filled up a wallet for those of you who like that. And thank you for so many people subscribing, of course. We also do the little fly pack, 6 of the lion fly, for those of you who don't tie or need some extra flies. I know last film I excused for the logistic problems we had through this corona situation, and it's been actually terrible. But also our logistic company didn't really do what they were supposed to do. So we now changed all our shipping into DHL. So those of you who've been waiting, hopefully now DHL, they promise us 2 or 3 days to worldwide. So hopefully that will be a lot better. Spending so many hours, doing so many years behind the vise, if you're like me, think that the fly is the most important thing. I mean, the fly is all the fish should see. There's testing and coming up with good and bad innovations. Some things work, some things don't work. Over the years, I'm proud to started colored tubing, putting cones on tubes, the turbo cone idea with a fly that would create turbulence, where you can use a lot of soft materials. Latest great innovation is maybe the TTT, where you fish the loose body and have a fly that will open up and add a little weight to it. Different designs and different flies, and since I'm so obsessed with flies and the way that they swim, this has been, through all my life, been really important to me. During this situation with the corona, actually I was sick pretty bad a couple of weeks there, but anyway, we were isolated. There were a lot of time. And one thing I did was to clean up the fly tying room, and there were a billion things all over, and found some good material and things that I didn't know I had. But one thing that was there was these guys. I just love ostrich, and I tie them mostly like a hackle, where I wind them on. I use the tips of the feathers. And these guys were on the table, and they've been there for like 20 years looking at me. I mean, ostrich, it's a fantastic material. These mini feathers, they are just superb. From starting to use this maybe 20 years ago, I just love them. They create so much movement and so much volume and a nice drop form that I just love them. So, but back to these guys. What would you do with this? I mean, they have fantastic fibers, but they are so stiff you can't wind them on. So they've been lying around before they went in the trash. Or I used some of the bigger feathers like this, where the tip is used, the feather is still full of nice fibers. Some of these I just split them like this, where I use a razor and I split them, and then I maybe on a big fly I can wind on this half feather. So, long story, but I think for me, this is a really great innovation, a really great way to use a feather. It came to me like struck me like lightning. Suddenly it was just obvious how to use these ones. You can't wind them in, but you can still use the feather by tying it in flat on the body. For me, the fly tier's perspective is wrong perspective. The fish will see the fly from underneath. It's the movement that we create this way that's important, not what's happening here. To wind on a hackle, you get a 50-50, meaning it's half right and half wrong. If you can put the feather on flat like this and use the movement in the material from the fish perspective, you create a better fly. So when this just came to me, I started creating different sizes of these feathers to tie in just flat on the fly like this. Of course, I went through all my favorite flies. You have a Patagorva and you have a Greenlander one, Ceylon, fantastic with the broad, from the broad perspective, and maybe even more the night flies, like the, here is a black and silver, or here we go, or the Mickley blue. Doesn't look much from that perspective, but just turn it over and you will understand how much this will work and how good and how good this will swim and how much motion this design will create. So I decided today I'm going to give you here now my version on this little crossover Patagorva and the nasty banana, the lionfly, and I'm going to do it in this version. I call them butterflies because they look like butterflies. I know Blacker back in the 1800s, he had his butterfly series that they were tied from the fly tier's perspective. These are tied the other way around. So let's get into the tying and see what we can do here, and hopefully you will also see the advantages in this design, this new design. The other flies been taking tens of thousands and Patagorva probably hundreds of thousands of fish. This design has still not taken any fish, what I know. Okay, so I'm gonna tie this on a golden Fitz medium, and depending on how much color I want, I can use either the fluorescent orange or the golden one. But today I'm gonna do this like I very seldom do, actually, with the same colors of both tubing. And I start by cutting this at an angle, like I showed you before. Put it on. I take the tubing, also cut that so I get an angle. Put it on. Make sure that I get the X small to go like halfway into the medium. I tie most of my flies with the 12-0 thread. I'm going to do that today too. I'm going to do it with an olive color to blend in with this fly. And I start by just putting some thread on to the part that I've cut. I can be quite generous with thread here. And what happens is that the medium that's been cut will take this and hold the extra small. And I explained it so many times before, the flexible tube is stronger than the stiff one. This will make it keep its flexibility because I don't put any glue on. So this is by far the strongest way of tying. So I'm gonna do a quite simple body. I'll go back and I will start with the Mirage. I love the Mirage. Mirage material will pick up colors. I will take the Mirage and I wind it back and make sure I keep 5-6 millimeters, and I go front and tie it in. And in general I tie everything in on the underneath, just because it's always going to be a little bit of a bulk there, and it's better to have that hidden away from the fly tire. The fish don't really care, so it can be from the fish perspective. Okay, and then I'm gonna do a tail. We are working with our tail fiber. We're having problems getting the right colors onto it, so I'm using different material here. You can do this with or without tail. I'm going to use the tail today. And showing you how you work with the tail is that you take the material, make sure it's not too much tangle, and you tie it in few turns, and you just double it back. Doubling this back means these fibers can't slip. Make sure to back up the thread so you cover up where you tie in your Mirage or your tag. Then I take the scissors. I don't cut it like this, I taper. So I take it and I go in from top and I pull and cut. And normally I do this like 2 or 3 times to get the right length and the right taper on this. I normally want the tail to go a little bit behind the hook. Not too long, but the longest fibers on the top makes it taper in a nice way. Okay, so then we'd use Holo braid, SSS Holo braid. Shouldn't swear when you do films like this, but I must say I'm bloody proud of this material. It's changed a lot of my tying. It's just very, very neat. It's strong and it's just a super material. I'm gonna use one for ribbing and I'm gonna use one for the body, and I always start by tying in the ribbing first. I use the orange one, hot orange in flames, and then I do the I do the body material and I tie it in on this side, move the thread about half the length of the body, and I got questions from the first couple of films saying how long is different parts, but it's all got to do with proportions, and I try to use as half the length of the medium tubing as the total length of the fly to get the hook inside. So if you're gonna tie 5 centimeter fly, you use 2.5 tubing, and if you're gonna do a 10, you do 5, and so. Okay, so now I take this and I wind it on, hold this down, cover up the thread. Even the SSS thread is a strong thread, it will be a vulnerable part of the fly. And then I overlap this. One of the big advantages with the SSS braid is that it's so thin that you easily overlap it without getting it bulky. And it's super strong too. And you can twist it. You know, twist it down to a ribbing, which I'm gonna do a little bit later. So this where is all my material? There should be some glitz here. Putting on some dubbing, and I will use Glitz, the longest fiber dubbing. I of course dub it on without any wax. Said it before. Maybe use a wax thread or use wax, because wax has melting point about 50 Celsius. And if you put this on with wax, it's gonna the wax will disappear when it gets warmer, and the fibers will come loose. So I just build this up and make sure you dab on enough with the material. It's very easy that you think this looks good, and then when you brush it out it's going to look too skinny. Okay, looks heavy you think, but you'll see it will be pretty good. I will save approximately 3 to 4 millimeters of the part where I have the medium tubing sticking out. Remember, you need to put the cone on to the extra small one, but I want the fly to be as strong as possible, so I want to build as much as possible onto the medium tubing. So here, 3 to 4 millimeters, perfect. Since I'm not going to do a normal hackle where we wind it on, it's going to be round like this, it's going to have as much motion to the fly tire as to the fish. But I want this to be a fishing fly, and I want it to move and behave good for the fish. So I'm not doing this. I take the braid, and I just twin it down to a ribbing, and I will put on, try to do normally 4 turns. On a classic fly there should always be 5 turns, but since I have so big part of the fly behind where I tie it in, it's the tube and the tag, it's quite like a third of the body. I don't do that. Okay, so this is super strong. This is one thing I can do if I really want to secure things and make this super strong, is that I fold this back and I cover it up with some thread. Doing this, it's tied on, folded back, means it can't slip. Then I cut it. Then I take my little brush. We had quite a few questions on when these new tools are coming out, and hopefully we're going to have the whole series of tools. It's going to be 9 different tools coming out in a month time, or latest they will be here in August. I have some samples, so you can see I used the scissor, which is the ergonomic one, where it's crooked one. We have a straight one. We have also a bobbin and dubbing needle, and a couple of so far secret little tools that's never been produced before. So a lot of talk here. Okay, so I do the brush, and it's the meanest brush there is, and I brush out the fibers. I want this to be translucent, and I want it to get shine a lot of light through it, but also to reflect a lot of light. Okay, so now it's time for this hackle, and we don't have the wind on hackle, so we're gonna put one feather on. And if you look at ostrich, you know, not many of them look like this, perfect feathers. Most of them will look a little bit shitty with fibers that are like this, or they like this. But there is a little trick on how to do this. I thought I had another one here, but oh, here we go. We have a third one. It's a little trick to make these become a lot better feathers to tie in. And what I do, that's why I have the water boiler here. I put the boiler on, and I'm gonna steam them. What happens with feathers when you steam them is that they come back to their original shape and form. So you just take them in, and I hold them, and you see what's happening with it. It's just becoming very nice again. So I can do this, I can dry them up, and it's an easy way of doing things and making feathers come alive again. But it's hot. There we go. And then you need to dry them a little bit, of course. But like a feather with this, where the hackles are crooked like this, you put them in, and you put a little steam on it. And they are perfect again. Nice little trick, but it's a good one, because many of those feathers are not really in a conditions to tie in. Okay, so I'm gonna use the lion colors. I take this feather where I've used the tip before, and I just strip off the bottom. And I try to tie it in with the length so it goes a little bit over the tail, but not too much. So this was a little too long, and I tie it in like this, and you can understand how much motion you will get from the fish perspective when you use the feather like this. But look at this. This is totally straight. If I tie it in, it's going to look like that. And especially when I do it on the TTT, I also use this on the TTT, but what I do is that I curve them over my thumbnail, same as I do with the jungle cocks actually, and I pull them really hard, and this really strong center of the feather will curve like that. The fibers will be the same, but they will curve. I curve the feather so I can tie it in and have it still be flat on top. Since this is so super stiff, I have to pull this a little bit to make sure I get it in the center. Use quite a bit of thread and cut it off. And you can understand this is not possible to wind on. Okay, it's slipping along a little bit here. So, looking at this is the way I want it, really wide and flat. If I turn this, you will see how it is. Okay, so what I'm doing now, I'm putting on a wing, and normally I put some flash underneath in the wing, HD, angel hair or flashaboo. I'm not doing that on the butterflies because the flash had the tendency to tangle in this. So what I do, I will start tying in the wing, and here we go. And I'm using this hair that's I call it lion color. It's actually looks like the mane of a lion. I start with the shorter hair, and as always, I cut it off close to the skin. I use my brush through my fingers and just brush this out, making sure that I untangle the fibers. Look at the wing, look at the taper. If there is some tangle, make sure I have a wing that is tapered nicely, and I just tie it in on top. The first wing should be slightly behind the tail. Tie it in, move it back, take my thumbnail and spread it out so it's wide before I cut off. And to be honest with you, it's kind of tricky for me to see what I do here because of the light when we're filming. It's not as good as when I normally tie. Okay, so here I have the first part of the wing. I will then put on some angel hair. The nasty rusty color is like made for the lionfly. So I use nasty rusty. I take a few fibers, not too many, 3 to 5 maybe, and I tie them in. Hold them, make sure they are widespread, 1 or 2 turns, and I just double them back. Again, doubling to make this secure these fibers so you can't pull them out. And I taper, same as I did with the tail. Just make sure I get different length of these fibers. Okay, and then I take the second part of the wing, and since this fly's got a wing that is actually maybe only 60% or so of a regular classic design or classic fly I do, I use smaller bunches of hair, but I make sure to divide it and put the angel hair in between. And here we go. I'll look at this now, so it's really nicely tapered before I tie it in. Make sure that this now is a longer wing, that the first wing will stop about here and the second will go up here, so I get a really good taper. And I tie it in. Spread it out and tie it in. And everything I do now is done on the medium tubing so far. Got it up. Okay, and again, to be sure that I have a good taper, I can take the wing and I can pull it and I can feel it and see that it is really got a few long fibers here. To put a little bit of extra sparkle, if you want, you can do this. You can take a few, that's a bad one here, a few of the angel hair and tie it in, double back. I think it was only 2 strands this time, 2 or 3 strands. They're really nice to have them to blend together with the peacock I'm gonna tie on top here. Let's see where we have those. There we go. Okay, so now I'm gonna show you something. Sourcing material for the pattern of the month packs. Last time I showed you a big fox skin, but it got us in a position where we had to buy a lot of stuff, and I had some of this. See if I can show you now, and we got the bleached, dyed peacock eye feathers, and they're just fantastic. Have them in a few different shades. See what I have here. Here we got one. That is really, really nice. Oops, a lot of material here. But what I do here, I can use 1 shade or I can use 2. And just take a couple of the fibers and tie them in on top. Just for the sake of it, I'm gonna use 2 different shades on this one. Tie them in, cut them off and split them between my fingers to create just a little, spread them like this and tie them in. Make sure that these are now as long as the longest fibers. These were super long. They're normally hard to get long fibered peacock. Look at it, so it's spread the way I should. So let's take a couple of the other ones too then. And I use what's close to the eye. These are a little stiffer. The feathers close to the eye are the best ones. Since I had 3 there, I'm only gonna use 2 of those. I think I cut off 3. I can use that on the next fly. And I just hold it like this between my fingers and make sure they are tied in on different parts of the wing, so they're not just bulky on top. Looking good. They're a bit stiff. The one that's dyed are a bit stiffer than the natural ones, or the one that's just dyed without bleaching. Oh, here we go. We have one guy who don't want to be there, so I just make sure if he's not coming around, I pull him out and see if we can use the same one. I try to be accurate with things. I just hate to look in my fly box and have a ugly fly. It's easy to tie fast and not accurate. And then you look in your box and think, what's I'm gonna fish with? I'm gonna do the natural jungle cock, and again showing you the CITES, important, do it the right way, legally. I pick 2 feathers and I use fairly small feathers, which ones I need to treat a little bit before I tie them in. This is it's a good looking cape, but it's a tricky cape where all feathers are really, really straight, and they have a tendency to don't want to go my way. So I'll have to be a little brutal with them. I form them over my thumbnail mechanically, like I showed you before. Always start with the one on my side, tie it in, make sure it's in the right way. Take the other one and I pull it over my thumbnail, curving it, making it follow the wing the way I want it to. It's better to curve it a little bit too much. Look from above, make sure they're the same length, and tie it in. I always try to look from above too to see that they are even. If jungle cocks are too uneven like this, they can make the fly spin or twist in the water. Okay, so now I have a fly that's really wide with a little tapered wing on top. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm just gonna secure this wing before I put some hackles on. I use support with the finger and put a little bit of glue on right on top of where I tied in the wing. Why I use support is because I don't want this and oops, and then you destroy everything. Okay, so we are ready so far. Time for some hackle, and on the flies, small and medium ones, I only use the Chickaboos. Actually, on most flies I use only the Chickaboos, but I'm gonna tie in the 2 feathers now, where I use the whiting hen, little longer, a little stiffer fibers on a feather here. Pick one that I think have the right length, not too long. I don't want the hackles to mix with the ostrich, and I just want to tie in 2 or 3 turns. Take away the soft part, and maybe I use like 2 centimeters. It's quite bulky piece of thread here, and I just, when I cut again, to be accurate, I put the scissors on, and putting the scissors on the fingers first, and then I cut. Doing this, I can be very, very accurate, just leaving what I need, that little triangle that I tie in on the fly. A few turns, take the feather, pull it down, I don't need that, 3 fingers, double it back and tie it in. One and 2 and ready. Go down with the thread onto the extra small tubing and tie it in. Cut away and take then one of the Chickaboos, super soft, and feathers that will create a lot of motion to the fly. It also helps building that triangle or that drop form shape that I want. Almost triangle, but I want to have the fly to taper, and this will help build up the front. Pull it away like before, put the scissors on, cut it off, create a little triangle, and tie it in. Not too many turns. Normally I use 3 to 6 turns on each material I tie in. And I double it the same way, 3 fingers, create the triangle, hide the wing and pull back so I get all the fibers to be one side of the center of the feather, and wind it on. And this time I do 2 or 3 turns. This is 3 turns, and I tie it in. And cut it off. Okay, look at this now. You will see how these very soft fibers will help to do the drop form shape. But you also see one of the reasons that I call this the lion fly. It's got a little mane, a little dark in the front, and it's lighter in the back. Normally that's what I want with the fly, darker in the front and lighter in the back. Okay, so I'll pick a cone. I'm gonna use the metallic brown, and again, I have to brag about this box. It's I don't know how I survived without this organizer before. It's just fantastic, easy way to pick them, and good order. Don't drop it on the floor. And what I can do here, I can use the extra small or the micro one. I'll let the fly decide. If I want to have a slightly slimmer fly, I will go for the micro one. If I want to have the normal drop shape, I will go for the extra small one. On this one, let's do the extra small. So I take a little bit of glue, and here's again a little bit of a trick. Support again. Put the glue on in front of the... That was a little bit too much. If I think it's too much, I can just use something, take some away. Put a little glue on there, away from the soft hackle, and pick it up with the thread. That way I avoid the soft fibers just sucking up the glue. And then we just press down the cone tight to close to the hackles, so it really covers up everything. 6 millimeters creates 6 centimeter of turbulent stream. Could have done the small one. The size of the cone and the design of the cone decides the profile of the fly. I want this to be wide, so the 6 millimeter on a fly that's about 8 will be fine. Okay, a lot of talk. And I take away the thread, the olive 12-0. I take the fly out of the vise, and I hold back the material, use support by the fingers, and cut about 3 mil. Take this and I hold it up, and I just melt down the little excess fits. The good thing with fits is also when it comes to the fluorescent materials is that the fluorescent doesn't burn, it concentrates. So the more you burn, the more fluorescent it will be. On the gold one, that's the important thing here, is to get the hole, of course. Okay. Lion butterfly, new design. This perspective looks almost the same. This perspective, the fish perspective, the important perspective, it looks totally different. The fibers will work from the center of the feather, and it will create a lot of motion. Wide, flat, like I want my flies to be. So we can put this here. The lion butterfly ready. It's a nice fly to fish on conditions like I said. Bit of sun, very good light, I would say, and a little bit of tint in the water, a little bit of humus. It's a superb color combination. And to me, looking at those fibers or these feathers for the 20 years and suddenly understanding this is the way I should use them, it's been a revolution for me, and I hope it will also appeal to you, and that you will try to tie flies with this technique. We did a little bit actually on the TTT. We did a little competition in social medias. We're gonna do the same on this. What I want to see how you guys use the technique with putting a flat feather on top of a tube like this, creating this very special design. You don't have to use the ostrich. You can use, like here, I have whiting hand feathers. I did a couple of general practitioners where I put one of these under the GP feathers, and they turn out really nice. It's a technique that we haven't been using that much. So we will launch this little competition. Keep an eye on our social medias and our web, and you will see it. And we can all learn, and we can take this exciting hobby, or I don't know if it's a hobby, it's an obsession, to take this obsession into new ways and hopefully creating even better flies. I think what we've been doing the last 20 years is moving the fly into being so much better than when Blacker back in the 1800s tied his butterflies. I think this is done in a fishing. This is making a way better fishing fly than the high classic ones. Okay, so we're gonna end this. We had a few questions on why don't you have your flight tester up here and show us how they will swim. And my flight tester is old and it's bloody noisy, and it's good. But what we did is we actually, since I've been away fishing now, we took one of the butterflies, this actual fly here. It's tied on a TTT. You can see how thin it is. This is the fly that the fish in Pool 9 in Murrum wanted to have. And we took this one and we put the camera under the water. And when I'm ready here, you will be able to have a look on how they move, what profile they will create, and how extremely sexy they are, and you know how good fishing flies they are. I absolutely love them. So I hope you've been enjoying. Oh, that's the TTT. Okay, I'll put this back. I hope you've been enjoying this third film. Next month I'm gonna do a classic fly on a half turbo cone, where you have to do some special things to avoid the problems you do with a half turbo cone. And we're going to create a medium profiled classic tube fly in the Scandinavian way. So thank you very much, all of you, for watching, and thank you for subscribing and follow us on social medias. And I hope you enjoyed what we've done here today.